Okay, I think we're going to get going. The Vice Mayor, Shanika Smith, cannot be with us. I don't know if she's going to be able to join us today. She had a family emergency come up. I hope we do this to this music, because that'll be nice. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome everyone to the City Council's 2022 retreat. It's nice to be back here in person with you all. I look forward to us spending the next couple of days together. You have in your packets our agenda for the day. I will just offer that I think this is a great opportunity for us to spend some time with one another, and part of this is kind of working on our working relationship, and then part of it, of course, will be more substantive. I hope all of you enjoy this experience as well. We have some staff that have joined us and some staff that are in the room, and of course the public is welcome to attend, and this is also being streamed. I'm going to introduce Rebecca Lowe. She is our facilitator for this retreat. Rebecca's down here in red. She has had an opportunity to talk with everyone here and help plan this retreat, and this is, she will be our facilitator, so we will kick it off to Rebecca at this point.
Before you start, we would just like you to know some unfinished.
Okay, I'm sorry, but we're not.
Council keeps pandering to.
All right, we'll just take a quick break and we'll be back.
And we are asking that you take care of your city, that you take care of your people.
All right, we're gonna turn it over to our facilitator to get us started. Rebecca Lowe, who's facilitated many retreats, but I bet not many that started like that, right?
No,
All right.
too
Well,
many, no.
we like to be special and unique.
I'm delighted to be with you guys. This is a little loud, isn't it? No, not any that have started like that. I've had a few end like that with protests, but that's because everybody was tired at the end of the day. So looking forward to time with you today. I want to thank you guys for all the time you spent with me preparing for this retreat. I met with each one of you, each council member. I appreciate the conversations that we had very much. I also met with each department head. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of that information with you as well. We're going to start on a light note. A lighter note. And so we're just going to do a little activity that hopefully will get us, come on thingy, get us refreshed before we begin. So we're going to do a check-in where I want each of you to take out a piece of paper and write down one thing that probably nobody else in here knows about you, and fold it up and put it in this bag. Totally random. And you should have pads in your...
Nobody in this room? Or
Probably nobody in this room would know or guess about you. Well, they can guess it. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull them out of the bag and have you all try to guess who it is. I don't know, where was that? Thank you. That's great. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. I know, Sandra, it's hard to decide, isn't it? so many things. Oh, come on, there's something.
It's just me?
No. You felt hounded? Watched.
I don't know, but people already know this.
You what?
People already know what I just wrote, I think.
Oh,
Things we don't know.
you know, what you did in third grade is fine. It doesn't have to be meaningful and deep. Did I get yours, Kim?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pressure was on. It was. Like,
You yielded.
I don't know.
This is supposed to be the easy part of the day, Sandra.
Right, I need a break.
No more breaks today. We've used all our break time, so this will be it.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, you know what I should have put in? Myers Briggs.
You kidding?
Oh, that's good.
Wow. I should have put something else in there.
No.
All right. All right. This one's very important. So we want to treat it with the seriousness it deserves. It says, I like meatloaf.
I like what?
Meatloaf. Meatloaf. Who do you think?
Oh, that's Esther.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, guys. Is it you? Yeah.
All right, if y'all get all of them, I don't know what. Oh, this is cool. A passion of mine is rebuilding old ships and getting them back on the water and running again. Oh, this is a great one. I received unacceptable conduct grades.
Rachel, I think it's Antoinette.
Oh.
Brad.
It's Brad. It's totally Brad.
Brad.
No,
It's
Brad's.
not me. Not around to that quick.
Oh, I didn't participate. Gwen.
Ah, yay, or Gwen. That's great. That's great.
I went to Catholic school. Everything we did was wrong.
Oh, okay. I'm a licensed broadcaster, and I've done many TV commercials, and I played on the Miami Vice series.
Nope. I think it's Sandra.
I thought it was Rachel.
I think it's Sandra.
Rachel? Oh, it's Sandra.
That's cool.
She's right. That's the reason why I kept saying, if I put that in, and that's what she said, I kept saying, if I put that in,
all of them?
Yeah, because I got hung up on them.
Oh, you want to know, because you want to write down who's already gone, so you know how few people are left to choose from. Oh, okay. I am a licensed broadcaster.
Okay.
I've done many TV commercials, and I played on Miami Vice series. All right, the next one is I drove myself to driver's ed class. So a lawbreaker from way back.
That's gonna end it.
Brett. Brett.
Did you do that?
I did not do that.
Oh, he did. Was it you?
I think it's Esther.
No, I'm the meatloaf.
She's meatloaf.
Oh,
She's
meatloaf.
Okay.
Wow.
At 14?
Man, my 14-year-old's my friend.
All right. I like motorcycles and bourbon.
Is that you?
But this person is my friend. Who is it? I like motorcycles.
Oh, okay, that's Deborah.
No, Deborah doesn't drink. It's not Rachel.
Brad, gotta be Brad.
Motorcycles, really?
It's not me.
Rachel?
I don't like bourbon, no.
Totally.
Well, there's nobody else at the table.
Wait, you didn't say Ken.
Yeah, I did say Kim. Oh. Yeah, that was a trick.
All right.
I was gonna say Maggie.
Okay. I don't golf often, but the last time I did, I shot a hole in one.
Such a popular answer to
Brett.
It is not me.
Is it Kim? It is.
Wow. That's so cool.
The first time, no, I've played multiple times, it was the last time I played. Okay.
Oh, this is cool too. I speak Italian.
That's Brad. You've already, I knew that about you. 'Cause
You all think I'm fascinating, and you're right.
I remember it because it was the night you knocked a drink over on me.
Well,
You said it's because you knew Italian. So I did spinning his arm around.
I was married to a Nigerian.
Deborah.
That's Deborah.
I mean, okay, I'm just saying. Not rape stereotype, but I'm just.
How's the last one?
We don't have yours yet, but.
It's not that interesting, actually.
Oh, this is very interesting. I was born without tonsils.
That's how cool I am.
All right, that's everybody. Good job. Now you all know something else about each other. All right, so let's. Oh, really? It's going to be like this, is it? Okay, so this is what we're going to do with our agenda today. We are going to work on some rules of engagement for our time together today. We're going to do a little activity about your why you do this work. We're going to stop and reflect just for a few moments about what the last couple of years have meant. We're going to review the working agreements that you developed for yourselves with Nicholas last year. So when you all were together, you created some working agreements about how you wanted to work together as a council. We're going to work on that. We're going to talk about roles and responsibilities. We're going to look at the department heads flash survey. So that'll be really interesting. You'll enjoy that. And then we're going to hear from staff about the focus areas, goals, and priorities. We're going to update you on everything that's been going on. And that's today. And then tomorrow, we're going to get a budget update, and then we're really going to get down to strategic practices and dive in on that. Okay? All right, maybe that did it, huh? Okay, this is how it is sometimes. Okay, so I started with a few rules of engagement that I thought we might look at, but I want us to think about what else do you need for us to have meaningful, meaty discussion today? What else do you need to be sort of in our guidelines for today? And here's some that I put up as starters. Obviously, be fully attentive. You've all got other places to think about, but we have a limited amount of time together in this venue, so I think being here is important today. Professional candor. I teach whole classes on professional candor, but I'm sure you all practice it every day and every time. So obviously, it's just about speaking the truth for yourself, but in a way that somebody else can receive it. Staying curious. Why do they have a different view from mine? Why do they disagree with me? Let's stay interested about that. We are going to deploy a parking lot today and tomorrow, which, is that a concept everybody's familiar with?
You should tell us just in case.
I will. So the parking lot is the place where when something comes up that is an important discussion, a valuable idea, but we don't have time for it on our agenda in this 2 days, we're going to put it on the parking lot so we capture it for you all to discuss or work on at a later date, but we won't get off track with what we're trying to do today. What else? What else do you want? Or do we need?
I think is this an appropriate place to kind of think about what the guardrails are for this retreat, you know, in terms of, because I think a lot of people think differently about what retreats are going to be all about. And actually, this council has different kinds of retreats. I mean, sometimes every 3 years or something, we might have like a whole new visioning process or, but we're not doing that this time. You
Yeah.
know? So just kind of, so that helps focus the discussion.
So kind of stay on strategy. Is that sort of? And our purpose. What others do we need? Nothing else? You don't need anything else? Do you want to keep moving? I want to write down, everybody needs to talk. Everybody needs to participate. We need your voices in the room. All right, so here's what I'd like you to do now. I want you to pair up, and I will pair you up, and I want you to have a conversation briefly about your why. Why do you do this work? What is the heart reason? And we're not gonna, this is not for public consumption. This is a conversation between the two of you. So the question is, in your heart of hearts, what's the reason for you? Because there are many good reasons why you could want to do this work, okay? So that's important. Okay, so we're gonna put Antoinette with Rachel. We're going to put Brad with Gwen. We're going to put Sage with the mayor. We're going to put Deborah and Kim, and we're going to put me and Sandra together. And have a conversation. So just get together, take about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and discuss that.
Not during this part, but.
No, yeah. That's beginning. Hold on, I'll be talking
in the eye of the beholder. The people that work with you every day. I think it's
All right, we got about 2 more minutes. Okay, let's get back together. Okay, we got to wrap it up.
I'll miss you and we'll be jealous about your producing. Please send us some pictures or something so we know, but don't rub it in. Every so often. I still live vicariously.
I'm just gonna get the quick, promise I'll be back.
Okay, so without telling somebody else's story, what kind of things did you hear about why somebody's doing this work? What did you learn about the why that you heard without repeating something that might be confidential?
I heard a focus on desire to help people and to help enhance people's quality of life or life experience through the kinds of decision-making that a city council can affect, and a love of the work, the type of work, the content of this work in particular.
Wonderful. What else?
Kind of like right place, right time, stumbling into a passion, and recognizing that working, especially in municipality, can have more effect on the day-to-day lives of folks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because you're local, you really do make a difference for us. I live in your city. I am the beneficiary every day of the work that you all and our department heads do, and it makes a huge difference in my quality of life and so many others. What else?
Having a passion and a skill for all the varieties of people and issues in a community and how they can coalesce into building stronger community. But really being understanding and able to relate to many different types of people in the community.
Oh, that's a great one. So to have that emotional intelligence, those people skills that really help you to be able to hear from a lot of different people. Okay, so I think that's important to remember as you're doing strategic planning. thinking deeply about why are we doing this and what kind of impact do we want to have. I think that's very important. So now I just want us to have an open discussion for a minute about the high-level impacts of the last couple of years. So there are challenging things and there are gifts in the challenges, always. And outright gifts that came to us over the last couple of years. So I want us to go around the room and I want everybody to name one hard thing. This is for you personally. This is not for the city. This is for you personally. What's one hard thing from the last couple of years? And what's one gift that you got, maybe a silver lining, out of the last 2 years? And anybody can start, and we'll go to the left.
I'll say a hard one. It's been really challenging for me to watch the housing and the affordability of said housing in this community continue to decline, and the community that we know and love and build being pushed out.
How has that impacted you, Sage?
I mean, I consider myself a housing advocate, and a housing and affordable housing in particular changed my life and changed the direction of my family's life. So I feel I'm saddened by it.
Yeah,
I wake up every day thinking about it.
yeah. And what's a gift that came to you in the last couple of years?
I've said this phrase a lot, but interestingly, the ARPA, the rescue plan money, we often have a lot of plans and no money to complete them, but for once we had a lot of money show up and no plan to implement it, and I think that was an interesting gift. Well, we are developing the plan. We got the money, then had to develop the plan. It's usually the other way around.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Okay, Kim?
So I'm going to start with the gift. This has been a really challenging year on a lot of levels, but our neighbors have been willing to participate, whether it's through advisory boards or in the Reparations Commission process or through applying for ARPA funds. Our neighbors are showing up. And yet, through the pandemic, and especially when we've had to do these virtual meetings, I know we're not alone in this work, but it has been really isolating.
Definitely. So thank you for mentioning a personal one there, Kim. I'm looking for your personal experience with the last couple of years. Sandra? We can come back. Okay. Deborah?
Separation from family and friends. And actually the gift was being separated from family and friends. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually it made me value the time. Every moment I'm valuing with my family and my friends. And every smile, every hug, every I love you.
Feels very different in person,
Feels
doesn't it?
very different in person.
Definitely. Mayor?
I would say, for me, the last couple of years, one of my challenges has been my health is likes to plague me periodically in different ways. So trying to manage that, and the pandemic has helped me a little bit have an opportunity to manage it a little bit better, or maybe worse. I'm not really sure because I exercised more, but and the gift, I mean, I think as Deborah was saying, something you might have taken for granted before the pandemic seems so much more important, or just bright to me. I was at Asheville Pizza on trivia night in the game room a couple Wednesday nights ago. It was the first time being in pretty packed room with a whole bunch of people playing a game together, and just seeing the joy of people doing silly things that you do in a group context that you haven't done for a couple of years, and how people are just having so much pleasure in seeing each other and doing silly things like that. I just have this heightened appreciation, instead before the pandemic it might have been, well, I can't find a seat, and now it's like, I can't find a seat. There's so many people here.
I know.
So
I know. That's wonderful. Thank you. Brad?
I want to try to articulate this well, but I would say being
biggest challenge over the past 2 years for me has been having to take a second look at what I thought I was doing right, in the way that I saw other people, the way that I saw other groups, the way that I felt like I was being part of solutions, and realizing maybe my active approach to that wasn't enough. And really having to do some internal reflection about that and say, you know, are you a bystander or are you participating in some of those solutions? And that's been a challenge. I would say that the gift has been, and you know, Deborah may share this as well, we came here at a time where life was still normal, and almost instantaneously life was far from it. And I've spent the majority of my time back in Asheville in an isolated pandemic world with a lot of other things going on. But I feel it's a strong gift, and I'm very appreciative of the relationships that I've been able to build here despite those circumstances. So that's something that's sustained me during all of that.
Wonderful. Rachel?
Sure, I know this group is still getting to know me, but I'm actually an extreme extrovert. I just am still getting to know you and figure out my role. So it's been really hard for me through the pandemic just because I like to fill my life with noise and have a lot of people around, and I am an external processor, so I need to think out loud. So being on Zoom calls has really kind of sucked the life out of me in some ways. But the silver lining with that is I've had to get used to being quiet and also processing my thoughts internally and dealing with some stuff that I use noise to kind of deaden in the past. So it's been good. It's been hard to get used to operating, not only just working in silence, but just not having a house full of people or having all of my evenings planned with other people. And so I've had to get used to quiet and being able to sometimes deal with problems on my own rather than using other people as sounding boards to work through those things.
Wonderful. That's great. Antoinette?
It has to be the most difficult. Well, probably for me, like for myself personally, a series of health challenges, but more difficult than that was uprooting my life to become a caretaker for a parent during a pandemic, and his ultimate death, also during a pandemic. But in many ways, that was also the most rewarding because my father was really a man of the community and always had to share. So I was afforded the opportunity to have quality, truly quality, one-on-one time.
Wow.
And I'm so appreciative of that. And also, the love and care from the community has just floored me. You know, I pretty much every day I learn about something that my father or my family did to help out people from the community.
Wow.
And the way folks are coming to me and my family to support is more than I ever would imagine. And I don't know that that would have happened had I not come back to be the caretaker. So now it's like folks are saying, we're gonna take care of you.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's as good as it gets. Gwen?
I think in isolation, it's been hard for me to deal with what I feel like is anger in the whole community and the whole country and possibly the whole world. And I'm very much an extrovert, so it's really felt tough. Because I guess I didn't realize there was this much anger. I don't know whether I wasn't listening or whether the anger has gotten stronger. But, you know, as Brad and I just talked about, I'm really going to miss the relationship with Ted when I go.
Note, she didn't say council. I'm gonna miss Gwen when she goes.
Okay, so let's think.
Sandra didn't get to go.
Oh, that's right. Oh, you did that on purpose. Give us yours, Sandra.
Well, basically, okay. Well, for me, basically, I was going to actually sort of reflect back on my life here and what got me to this point. When I moved back to take care of my mom, my dad, and my sister, which I've lost in the last few years, which basically was the impetus that pushed me to move forward. I had been taking care of people all my life, and I came back in 2012 to take care of them. And the thing is, through all that, it made me see who I was as a person and what was important to me. And I realized that my life has been always helping others. And when I decided to run for council, it was more or less a way that I could help as many people as best I could in this short period of time. And that was the reason I decided to run and to do what I'm doing now. And that has given me so much pride. It's given me the energy to go on and do things that I never thought before, and it's because of them. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I was able to spend the last 5-6 years. I came back home in 2012 before, they passed. And also my son, who was supposed to have been going on to school, he made a sacrifice to come and spend the time with grandma and grandpa. And I want to let people know that those type of relationships are more important to moving us forward, because it keeps us sort of focused on what's important. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say that's the gift. The gift is the gift of being able to see that we can go as far as we want. We just have to have a reason behind it. Thank you.
That's very well said. It's kind of like, I know you all have been thinking this from time to time, and we're hearing it discussed in the media about, are we going to be the pandemic of 1918, when afterwards everybody just wanted to shut it down, not talk about it, not just move on. And it virtually disappeared from the history books. And so it's interesting to think about this pandemic, and will we carry the gifts forward, at least, even as we are happy to leave the challenges behind when we get there. I know we're not there yet, but we're getting there. So when you were with Brad not Brad. Did you do this, Brad? Did you do it last year?
I mean, I was a big part of it.
When you were with Nicholas Beeman last year, you all came up with some agreements about how you wanted to work together as council. And this is the actual slide that he gave back to you after that conversation. And so, I don't know if you all have this in your books. Okay, good. Okay, tab 6. Because it's kind of hard to read up there. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little fun. And we are going to think through these one at a time. And I have set up a Mentimeter poll for council to vote on confidentially, anonymously. It cannot be tracked who said what. But to vote on each one of these and how you think you did. Not you individually, but how do you think the council did in that one? And so you're going to get to pick a red, yellow, or green for how well you did on each one of these, so that we can take a look together at the results. I'm giving you the Menti so that only you guys can vote. And it is truly anonymous.
Okay, so you're gauging not how well we think we as an individual have
Correct.
done with these, it's we as a group.
Correct. How do you think you as a group did? So the first one is be patient with your teammates. And you'll just choose red, yellow, or green. Yes, I want the results hidden. Um, Okay, there it goes. Sorry, my bad. Now you can vote.
Oh, you have to vote again.
Yep.
Oh, it said we voted.
Oh, it did? Okay, good.
In the bottom right, it says 5 people voted. So somebody didn't vote. Or was only council supposed to vote?
Only council.
There's 6 now, okay.
Okay, bring a mindset of ownership to the process. What that meant was, you've got to, you can't just throw an idea out there. You've got to bring and think like an owner. So if we're gonna do this idea, how will we make it happen? Where is the money coming from? What? Yep,
You're not a customer, you're the owner.
you're the owner, right.
Can you go back?
But you're still talking about the council as a whole, not
Yes.
The council as a whole. Would you give yourselves a red, yellow, or green for that? Everybody ready to move on? Okay. Okay, okay.
Because it's saying like, I've already voted on this question.
Can you refresh it?
And then it goes to mindset of the thing.
I'm not, maybe you can't. Don't worry about it, Antoinette. Okay, speak up if you have a perspective or feedback or need more information.
On the paper, it says early, which is a key word.
Key word, speak up early. That's a key word. If you have a perspective, feedback, or need more information, don't come back later and say, we needed that. Ready? Okay. Use a pros and cons list as a tool to make logical policy decisions.
Well, that might be offered as a tool every time.
Okay, so how do you think council did?
It's not, yeah, it's like with this used.
I don't think it's likely that you're going to use one every single time, so. Ready? Get staff get staff briefings for background in advance of conversations and decisions. All right? Assume positive intent and check that your interpretation of what was said is accurate if you have a question about it. Respect how others receive information and make decisions, and this really means differently than yourself. Respect that others may receive information and make decisions differently. Ready? No triangulation agreement. Everybody know what this is? I talk to you about you. I don't talk to somebody else about you. Seek different perspectives. Be curious. Ask questions in ways that strengthen the team's health. You know how sometimes a question's not really a question? Avoid surprises. Provide feedback or a heads up individually before making comments publicly. Oh, did I miss one?
They didn't track exactly.
Oh, I put a couple, a couple felt like they went together. So that's what I did. Okay, now I'm going to show you your results. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, so the first question, be patient with your teammates. You all gave yourselves a yellow.
What's going on with these other colors?
Those are the colors that Minty puts in there that don't mean anything. It's just their bottom of the bar. Just they don't go together, do they? I tried long and hard to change them, but I could not. So, gave yourselves a yellow. And somebody gave you a green. And somebody didn't vote. Oh, no, you only have 6 here. That's right. Okay, bring a mindset of ownership to the process. Yellow, a couple of reds. Speak up. You gave yourselves a green there.
The big surprise.
We have such a shy group here.
So shy, so shy. All right. Use a pros and cons list. Y'all didn't use this as much as maybe you thought you would last year, even though it was offered.
So in this, staff always provides, they do provide. pros and
Oh, that's
cons.
great.
This is a signal of ignoring. That's all I'm saying. Staff's
Okay.
doing their part. Really,
Okay.
you can lead the
Okay.
horse to the
So
water.
y'all may not be discussing it in terms of the pros and cons that were given to you. Is that what you're saying, Mayor?
We might decide we don't think
Care.
those should be the pros and, we're,
Okay. Okay,
I don't know what to do about that.
okay. What do you think you should do about it? Do y'all think you should pay more attention to the pros and cons list that staff's giving you?
I don't think it's necessarily that we're not paying attention to it. Sometimes, as the mayor said, we might disagree with it.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I think the pros and, so the staff's pros and cons are gonna be very pragmatic.
Yes.
From an operational standpoint.
Right.
And they're not supposed to weigh in on pros and cons that veer outside of that, like if they're
political or
Priorities.
No, they can certainly reflect, community interests and community preferences and things like that.
Mhm.
But there may be things that the elected officials feel need to be considered that staff, we wouldn't even ask staff to include in that because it wouldn't be appropriate for them to do
Absolutely.
it.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And I will say, I definitely appreciate it because very often it's something that I would have never considered on my own, you know?
Yeah, so it's new information sometimes to help you as you think through it.
Well, and we don't,
If there's it could be something like, we'll have to redo the entire stormwater infrastructure in this site, for example. But we wouldn't necessarily know that. None of us are engineers, so.
Right. Right.
If I might add that I still am of the opinion that we're missing things in our staff report, which is if we were doing a financial impact, but also with the pros and cons, adding an equity impact and a sustainability impact, it doesn't mean that we would measure it right the first time around, but we would make a sincere effort to bring those issues to the conversation every time, instead of us having to one-off every time, because that seems to be where we're spending a lot of energy, instead of operationalizing equity.
Okay, interesting. Okay. The next one is get staff briefings for background. You said, yeah, we're doing that. So that's really good. Welcome, Shanika. Okay, assume positive intent and check that what you said is accurate. What you thought you heard was accurate. Survey says yellow.
I think this is an interesting one too, because I genuinely believe that everyone on council has a genuine intent, has a positive intent. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this job. I don't buy this theory that some people hold that people get elected to office to do something, to ruin their community.
Right.
I know some people believe that, and I think that's kind of bizarre, but I think what it is what the way you want to do it or the outcome you're seeking might not be shared, right?
Right.
So that's something different than whether or not you have positive intent.
Right. Assume that the other person you disagree with is coming at it from a place of positive intent, as well as you are in your view. Okay, respect how others receive information. Yellow and green. That's pretty good. Whoops, did I miss one? No triangulation agreement. Not that good. You didn't do that well on that one. Room for improvement. Seek different perspectives and be curious. Yeah, you like that. You said you did that well. Ask questions in ways that strengthen the team. Yellow, so you've got some room to improve there.
Probably not in an election season.
That makes it much harder, doesn't it? Different audiences. Avoid surprises. Yellow. Are you surprised by that one? Okay. So, looking back here, are there any we're going to take a break right after this, but are there any thoughts or ideas, or are there particular ones you want to focus on in the year ahead? Here's what I'd like you to do. Each one of you, just for your own consumption, we're not going to share this. I would like each one of you to take a moment and write down one of these that you yourself want to do better in the year ahead. Not council, but that you are going to show up differently and make a commitment to yourself to do one of them better. And these are not going to be shared. This is just for you. And I love this quote. It's never too late to be who you might have been. George Eliot, whose real name was Marianne Evans.
I gotta tell you, your pictures are perplexing a little bit, but I get it.
They're what?
They're perplexing, I like.
Oh, really?
Reflection.
Oh, the reflection was a, oh, what?
Well, I mean, they're supposed to be, right, symbolic of the topic on it, right?
Yes.
So this is your.
So this is growth. This is growth.
You haven't bloomed yet.
Yeah, this is about to bloom. What are you about to get better at? Yeah, I should explain my pictures. I don't think you're gonna have any trouble with the next one. Everybody know what they're gonna do better? We finished that? What do you think that one means?
Break time?
Lunch. Now, I don't know, this is a little earlier than we meant to get to lunch. We've made up some time. So I don't know if it's here yet. Should we keep going? Okay, so we'll keep going till we get the high sign. Do you need a break, though? I've kept you here pretty long.
We need Shanika to tell us something about her that none of us.
Okay, but first, you all, we've gotten feedback again that if y'all could please speak into your microphones, so you might want to pull them closer or something, because the people in TV land can't hear you.
That's an example of one.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
we heard Sandra was on Miami Vice.
let's keep going since we're a little early. Maybe you'll get out early. We don't need a break? You're good to go? All right. So the next thing we're going to do, the next section is called a look back. No picture, but it's called a look back because in a minute we're going to hear from staff about staff reports and updates. But first, I wanted us to do a little bit of grounding, mostly for, not for council so much, because you all know this, but mostly for others to understand what the roles and responsibilities are and how they differentiate between what management, staff, have as roles and responsibilities and what our council or the board's roles and responsibilities. So, good fences make good neighbors is what the fence is for. And when I think about roles and responsibilities, that is definitely what I think of. It's not coming up. Okay, so what this is supposed to say is that your first role and responsibility is foresight as council. Your job is to look forward and think about what's coming down the road, what do we need to plan for, long-term vision, big picture view down the road. Second responsibility you have is insight. And this is about being receptors of the information in your community, being the hearers of what the community wants and needs so that you can interpret that by way of strategy. So having insight into what does the community need. The third responsibility is strategy and creating strategic direction. And strategy is something that really only you can create. That is your responsibility, to think about what are the high priorities, what are the big, huge strategic goals that we want to focus on. And strategy is usually, not always, but the timeline for strategy is often 3 to 5 years. Doesn't have to be, but we're kind of looking for a little bit of a longer term picture when it comes to strategy. And lastly, I would say priorities. For you to decide, we can't do everything. I tell boards a lot, I work with a lot of boards of directors, and I tell them all the time, if you have 10 priorities, you don't have priorities. If you can't remember what they are and jot them down and communicate them clearly, they're not clear enough. That's not a priority, that's a to-do list. So for priority's sake, we need to keep it clear, big, and brief. So let's look at this. Oh, now you decide to do it. Okay, so I want us to look at what is under the city manager's purview and what is under council. I don't think a lot of people in the public may not understand the distinction between what is the responsibility of each. So setting strategy is not the city manager's responsibility. That is the council's responsibility, as we just said. Creating projects is not council's responsibility. It's the city manager's responsibility to take the priorities that the council sets, the strategy that the council sets, and decide how are we going to get there. So how are we going to get there? By council, their strategic priority. Board service, it can be really hard to keep your hands off, telling staff what to do, giving staff direction, which is not the responsibility of a board or of council. That's the responsibility of management to be the one. So my mother is in an assisted living community. I'm on the board of the assisted living community. It's Givens Estates, fantastic community, wonderful place. It's very tempting every time I see some little something that I don't like, I have to be very careful to not play my board card, to hold it back, to not be the one to always go to the nursing director and say, you know, this wasn't quite right. That's not my job. I can go to the CEO and say, that didn't feel quite right, and let them decide what to say to staff, but that's not my job as a board member, and it's not yours as council. Hiring, the only reason I have a plus minus on council here is that you have 1 employee.
Three.
Oh, you have 3 employees. Sorry. You have 3 employees, valuable, important, critical, essential employees. Performance reviews. When it comes to employees, I should have put a plus minus here. You should be doing performance reviews for your employees, your 3 employees. And if the city manager decides to come ask for input as she is doing performance reviews, then she'll ask you if she needs that or wants that input for that point. Some years, sometimes that fits and sometimes it doesn't, depending on what the rest of the performance review needs to look like. But for your 3 employees, it's important that they get it. Overseeing the budget, that's everybody's job. Everybody's got to look at the budget. Passing ordinances is not a city manager's job. That's council. Incurring debt, I didn't really know the answer here, so y'all probably need to tell me. But I'm assuming council, for the most part, approves any debt that you undertake. The reason I wasn't sure about Deborah is I don't know if the city has credit cards or debit cards, payment cards.
There's a threshold,
Okay,
but it's within the budget, so, and the council passes the budget.
okay, so it's all approved by council. And choosing priorities. That is council's job. The reason I gave the city manager a plus minus here is within your priorities. Let's say her staff comes up with a list of 10 things we want to do. she's got to help them prioritize which ones are going to have the most impact to get to council's strategic direction and priority. Any of you have questions, discussion, pushback on any of this? I'd love to hear it.
I do think the council shares without being prompted, their feedback. I do think the council shares without being prompted their opinion or feedback about performance. We will share with Deborah. Will we share with you? If
You're very sharing.
I mean, we understand we're not, you know, I think we do a pretty good job of understanding that kind of wall between us and staff, but we will share positive things and negative things.
That's great.
Yeah, I think this is Government 101, at
Yeah.
least Government North Carolina 101. And this is something that I think we as elected officials don't do as good of a job as we could sharing this with the public and making it pretty clear. Because I think we internally have a pretty, or we as council have a pretty good understanding of this, but the public has a hard time distinguishing the two. And so sometimes it can feel, and not only this, but also like the difference between the municipality and the world at large.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that, you know, because I'm a city council member, I probably don't have a lot to say about, or shouldn't have a lot to say as on the national level.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, do your constituents reach out to you when they have a problem that it's really more appropriate for them to reach out to staff to? Do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of tools for constituents to report issues, like the Asheville app and things like that. But we get all the time kind of constituent concern emails that, and it's really, it's totally appropriate to send it to us. It's just that we will have to then route it to staff. And it's good for us to get some. I don't know how we wouldn't be able to manage all of them, but,
Right.
So that we can see what folks are concerned about, even if staff's gonna have to address the concern.
Yeah.
I would add one other line to this,
Okay.
and that is policy adoption. So, technically, the council's gotta vote on ordinances because those are laws. And that's the only way to do that. But policies are adopted, policies are adopted both internally by staff on a departmental level and then expressed via resolution or votes by the council as well. So that can be extra confusing
Yeah.
about how does because, departments have tons and tons of policies, operational guidelines and policies that council never even sees, touches, hears nothing,
Right.
So that can be tricky. And then our charter, our lawyer will remind us, confines us as a council from stepping over into that territory.
Yeah. I would think that'd be really important for your constituents to know, that you do the ordinances, you set the laws, so to speak, layman's language, Brad. And then the policies that flow out of that into what's really going to happen on a day-to-day business and how are we going to conduct the city's business, and that those regulations are the city manager and her staff's purview.
I have a question. Gwen, could you help me understand more what you mean about not having a position on national issues? Because I think about our state, like our legislative agenda, we have positions in the state. We're dealing with housing issues, neighbors experiencing homelessness, climate change issues, and I expect for myself to have a position on national issues.
I think we individually have positions, but and positions and opinions are one thing, but power over it is another. We can't state level initiatives. Yes, we can absolutely weigh in as a council and as individuals. However, realistically, we can't make it happen. All we can do is influence, and I think there's a misunderstanding out in the public. I mean, TDA, for example. I mean, we can make a lot of arguments and realize that, we'd like more of those funds to come to the city and be under our control. However, it's not our ultimate decision. And I just think the public sometimes misunderstands that and thinks that somehow we have voted for for example, the TDA to, those funds to be under our control. We've never voted on that. And I mean, we don't have, we have voted on it, but we can't change it unilaterally, and I think there's misunderstanding out there.
Thank you.
And it seems a little bit like, just speaking as one of your residents, it seems a little bit like that's not what we elected you to do. So yes, have a personal opinion, yes, take positions and advocate for them, but when it comes to council work, we want you doing your role, which is plenty big here. Pushback on that? Okay. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the department heads flash survey. Do you get the flash thing? So let me tell you where this came from. When I met with each council member, quite a few of you said, we really would like to know how our department heads are doing. Wonder if they're, if everything's good with them and are they doing well? So out of those comments, quite a few of you raised that question in one way or another. Out of those comments, I designed a 2-question survey, and I met individually with each department head and talked to them confidentially, telling them that I would not reveal their information, that what I'm going to do is capture themes that come up out of those questions so that you all can get the information that you really wanted to have, and you can get the real information because it's confidential. So what I'm reporting to you today are the themes that came out of this survey. And I also just want to say that you have incredible people for department heads in this city. The amount of commitment and dedication and effort, they are just wonderful human beings, was my initial impression when I met with each one of them. So gratuitous opinion, but it was quite something. So I asked 2 questions. The first question I asked was, give 5 words that describe how you feel about your job. So when I asked that question, these are the words in order of frequency that came up. And I lumped some together that were the same thing, basically. But this is how they came up in order. The number 1 word was overwhelming. Exhausting. Challenging or exciting. Rewarding, fulfilling. Unvalued or undermined. Under-resourced. Frustrating. Dedicated, responsible. Grateful. Hopeful. And supported. And I will tell you that of everybody I spoke to, everybody had some of those uplifting words and some of the more challenging words. People were both. And that's their lived experience. And I think it's very helpful. So,
This is the same list when you're a mom.
yeah. It is. This is also the mom list, Rachel. It's the mom list. Yeah. And the dad list, I have a feeling. And the lots of people list. But I thought it was really interesting that overwhelming was at the top and supported was at the bottom. And remember that supported wouldn't, lots of words didn't make the page. So it had to have been provided multiple times by multiple people before it made the page at all. Thoughts about this?
I would like to say, I find it very concerning that some of the answers that got the most attention are basically indicative of the staff's, let's say the staff's overall feelings of how they feel about their position and what they're doing. And I think with any company, and which basically even with the city, it's a company, it's an organization. I think with those type of challenges up that close, I think that's basically somewhat concerning, because it's a perfect storm for sort of not having the support of not feeling supported and not feeling a part of a team, which means that if with those type of challenges up there, then you're looking at a perfect storm of mass exodus of people influencing other people's behaviors. And I think what is important with any organization, if people are happy where they are, then the people will work together and try to make sure that everything within the company or whatever is working well, because everyone is taking care of each other, everyone's got each other's back. And I find that as far as, like people say, as far as salaries or whatever, I've seen people in companies that are so happy and feel so rewarded for what they're doing, they do not look at that as something that will keep them from being there. So I think those are very concerning, and that's something that we as a city needs to work on.
Is part of your presentation going to get into the needs, root causes and ways to address this?
No, because for the most part, that's Deborah's, but the second question I asked is going to get to some of that, but I would also like to give you more color commentary on any of this that you would like to have. So I can't reveal confidences, but I can absolutely tell you why that came up. If there are any of these you'd like more information. You want me to walk through them?
Well, and that would be helpful to me. I'm hearing from staff these things, and what my understanding is it's, related to our staffing levels are at a critical point. But tell us if there's, what else is your feedback is.
Absolutely. Let me just walk through each of them quickly.
Just
Yes.
real quick, how
Yes.
many department heads are there? 17, thank you.
So overwhelming was a combination of lots of things, but this word came up so often that, I would write it down and I would think, there's that word again. Overwhelming was about staffing shortages, absolutely. It also was about unrealistic expectations, thinking that when we're driving on all of these things to try to make things happen while we're shorthanded, and then something new comes in over the transom that we have to take on, that is just overwhelming. So it was a lot about that. It was a lot about we're pedaling as fast as we can, as hard as we can. We're already doing job plus just to keep the wheels on with staff shortages. And there's just not room to be diverted by anything new.
I have a question. Even though it's the lower end of the list, what are the feelings around gratitude, hope, support, so we can amplify that and grow it?
I'm going to get you there. Exhausting is about, they're working time plus a half, at least. I mean, they are working really a lot of hours. Everybody I talked to was working a lot of hours just trying to keep everything afloat. And they're so concerned about their employees that they're not going to short their employees. So they short themselves before they will not provide coaching and support and comfort to their own employees. So that's a lot of what came through in exhausting. Challenging and exciting, a lot of people love the variety of what they get to work on. They love that they chose this work because it was hard and it was exciting to be able to make things happen and have real impact on people's lives. And they found that really important and valuable. Rewarding and fulfilling was just that on steroids. It was, I get to have impact on my community with what I do. And that's why I'm here. I heard again and again and again, I and my people could make twice as much somewhere else, but I get to make a difference here. And what I do is so fulfilling that I chose to be here. I want to do this. Feeling unvalued and undermined. This came very much from the feeling that sometimes rocks get thrown at them in public. Sometimes by a council member. They feel that. And they want to know that they have your support and trust. And for them, and many people did say that they did. But many people said that they felt undermined or unvalued because, and we'll get to it on the next question, but for instance, quite a few people said, you sometimes speak out on things in public before you ever came and asked us what we were doing about that, or why we can't do that, or how we got to the policy we got to. And so one thing they said was, let us tell you first, before you speak out in public about what we're doing or not doing, let us tell you what we're doing. Under-resourced, everybody knows what that's about. That's about, we could use twice the budget we have. We're not asking for gravy. This was very much what I heard. We're not asking for luxuries, I promise you. We're holding things together with duct tape. And there are real needs, and we are under-resourced to meet those needs. Something else that you'll see in the next question was this idea that when we defer maintenance expenses, when we defer maintenance on capital projects, we're just making bigger capital projects down the road because we won't fund what it would take to take care of the stuff at the beginning. So frustrating, I think that's pretty obvious. That's all of the above. Dedicated, responsible were other words that showed up so frequently that even though they kind of go with rewarding and fulfilling, this idea of dedication to what they do and feeling responsible, that if they don't hold their finger in the dike, so to speak, that terrible things could happen. They are responsible and feel a sense of dedication to the work they do. Grateful, Kim, was about people saying, I'm so fortunate to get to have my job, to get to be in the city I care about, to get to serve my neighbors. And hopeful, I just loved that hopeful made the list. And hopeful was about, so I heard this. I heard several people say, I trust city council. I trust them to have my back. I trust them to be trying to do the right things, I trust them to have their hearts in the right places. And their job is thankless too. I heard that from several people. So the hopeful comes from that, I think, from this sense of we are moving forward as a city. We are a wonderful place to be and to live. We have so much going for us, and to get to be a part of that is a very hopeful experience. And the supported comes very much from the internal perspective. So, point of personal choice. There's one thing I left off that just kind of didn't quite fit the question, but came up again and again and again. And that was, we have an incredible city manager. I heard that again and again and again. Best boss I ever had, you know. So I think a lot of the
I
supported.
promise you, I did not pay her to say that.
No, you did not.
I just want to go on
You
record.
did not. You did not. And I'm sure you wouldn't let me. I'm sure you're embarrassed that I even said such a thing. But I thought council needed to know that came up and that was a common theme. Ready to move on? Question 2?
lunch is here.
Oh, all right. Well, let's take a break. Let's eat lunch, and then we'll come back and do number 2. That sounds great. Let me get back to my cow. That is a Highland cow. Highland, yeah. Oh, sorry. If you could be back by 12:50, that would be great.
setting me up to be the lesser here.
No, you win.
I really can't compete with what's going on.
The number, I'm actually still wearing my Apple Watch just because it's so depressing how few steps I've been taking lately, and I don't want to know who's mad at me all the time.
Anybody who spends their day turning food into a person, really, you get the leeway.
I'll only have that excuse for a few more weeks, and then the
Well, milk
question
it.
is, am I going to get back to being an active human or not? We'll find out.
I will tell you, you've got plenty of people there, especially on the second floor, who will be happy to join you if you want to have motivation.
Well, I never had what I had in Charlotte and Denton, where it's like, let's go for a running meeting.
Yeah.
And then, you can shower and go back to the office after we solved all the world's problems.
The midday run has never worked for me. Having a workout. Once I start sweating, that's hours. That's not shut down. A shower does not remedy that. Time down does not remedy
Oh, no,
that.
I would be the sweaty mess the rest of the
It
day.
would be gross. Everybody would ask me to quit.
Well, I will, Justin will literally sweat the rest of the day. And we just got over it.
Well, Justin and I still sort of follow each other on Strava a little bit. And I have backed my running up quite to what I think is a much more reasonable place. I'm usually running 3 days a week, sometimes not even that, sometimes 2 days a week. My runs are more in like the 5 to 6 mile range usually, maybe like 8 to 9 miles for the kids, but I have found that seems to be a little more sustainable than over the top.
And we got it, I love that word. We got a text from, well, Kim was supposed to drive. Hey, Marcus wants to meet with you. And I was like, we're sweating. She said, I don't care. So we, Marcus and I are running clothes after running 14 miles. She's like, it's so great. I love that this is the culture here. And I had to say, you really were working. And running is not free.
Well, I can work the first few miles of that, but I'm not working about 5 miles, 14 mile run. It is not
I do,
easy.
you guys will call me. I can talk on the down. That's what I say. That's how I do it.
We
Like,
can
when
always
I'm
tell.
around, I'm like, I'm going down it.
It would come in spurts. Periods of silence and breathing and then responses.
Charlotte was a lot flatter than, for the parts that we chose.
So I will tell you, and I already told you this, I apologize if this is a repeat, but I ran a half marathon in Charlotte the day before I moved here. And that was on a Saturday. I came up here on a Sunday, and then I think I got moved in. And Monday I said, I'm gonna go do a run and explore a little bit. And I thought, I've been running so much lately. I said, I'll do slow and roll around. I'll do 8 to 10 miles and see how I do. I was totally exhausted. I quit at 5. It was so different.
It's totally different.
It's completely different.
totally
And it's not like I didn't know. I mean, I lived here for 4 years and ran all the time.
I like it so much more because I like to workout. I don't like it. I'm not, unless I'm like, right. I did a ride the other day on the NB Ram up to the Parkway. And it was like just a couple girlfriends and we were doing a steady climb. Probably my heart rate did hit 160 and we could chat the whole time. Then I'm like, if I have something.
Road biking?
Oh, yeah, it was when we were on, what was it, gravel bike?
Very popular here.
It is.
Oh, no. It's good because some of the road was paved, some roads are, but it's not like mountain bike.
Yeah, I want to get, I sold my road bike for a Peloton, thinking that's going to be my future for a little while, but my road bike wasn't that nice, and I think I could convert it into gravel bikes, and I'm kind of regretting selling it.
Well,
I think we want to go and order it now.
Well, I think right now, with the baby, I need to be realistic that a Peloton is probably the next year. Future, so maybe good to, are you a first time? I am. I have no idea what to expect, so I'm just.
That top 10 list again, like.
Yeah, I know.
That's it.
I'm hopeful there's like some more positive
ready to go. All right, so lunch was delicious. Thank you to whoever on staff made that happen. It was absolutely wonderful. Okay, so let's finish the results from the survey. Where am I going? Oh, yeah, okay. So the second question that I asked department heads was this one. Oh, it was not that one. It was that one. What is something city council could do to support your department? And here were the answers in the order of their frequency. Trust us and show it more often. The theme here was about give us the benefit of the doubt and say it publicly. So know that we are expert at our job, know that we really know what we're doing, and that you can depend on us, you can rely on us for the information we give you. Your public support for us really matters internally. This was about the staff. And what I heard was they respect and appreciate who you are. No, there was not a single instance where I felt like anybody was bashing council, not one time. Full of respect and appreciation for your roles. And they said, you have no idea that when one negative comment is made about their area publicly, their whole staff is demoralized by it. They all see it, they know it, they feel it. So it's just wanting you to know that it makes a difference. Not that you should never criticize, but wanting you to know it makes a huge difference how you speak about them and their departments. They would like for you to set clear, concise, realistic, strategic goals. This was interesting. A lot of people said there's sometimes a small minority of constituents who are wagging the whole dog, so to speak. A small number of people who are having an outsized and overweight balance with you about what you should be doing. And they just want you to remember the silent majority as well who are out there quietly appreciating. They would like you to make core services a priority of yours. They said, 80, 90% of what we do is core services. It's making stuff work. It's taking care of the day-to-day. It's creating excellence in service delivery. And they would like for you to understand that that is a priority for them. And so they'd like for you to make some kind of priority of the fact that that excellence, that level of excellence, particularly with staffing down, is a priority. Everybody, almost everybody, said something about the comp study that you did. And one of the things that they said was the fact that every member of council voted to do the comp study was so meaningful for them and really lifted morale. They said from the next day, people were excited about it and felt supported and encouraged by it. Big C is my error, but your cohesion matters to us. When you all cooperate to get things done, staff really feels that. And when you don't, staff really feels that. They would like to have opportunities to share with you what they're working on, so that you know more about what are the things they're doing to deliver on the priorities you've selected? And I think for some people, they didn't feel like they really had much of an opportunity at this point for that. At least not with the council at large. Be more brave in the community. They would like for you to be willing to stand up and say, this is why we chose this priority. Or this is why we can't do what you would like us to do. Or you've made a decision as a council, and then you get a lot of pushback about it. Stick to your decision. And you had good reasons for why you made the decision. And be willing to bear that well when you're going to get some reaction. And that they need capital investments for this deferred maintenance question. We talked about that a few minutes ago. I think that was all of them. Oh, and they're very grateful that council chose to do this survey. I heard that again and again and again. I can't believe they asked us. This is so meaningful that they would ask for this information. And they felt really encouraged by that. Questions for me about any of this? Comments?
I don't know whose idea it was to do that, but if it was yours, Deborah, thank you, because I think that's a great last statement. And going to these department heads, I know this particular exploration of this 2-day process has been very helpful for me.
Good.
Actually, it was council.
Was it?
Yeah, you all asked. And I said, how about if we did this? I took what you said and said, I think this would help get at that. Okay. Is there anything that you didn't hear that you thought you would? Okay. Well, I think it was, those were very good conversations. And I know you all know because you interact with them all the time, but I didn't know how special they are. And so I was so encouraged, and I kept telling everyone I talked to, I'd say, listen, I just want to say on behalf of the silent people living in your town, I'm so grateful for what you're doing to make things happen. I felt terrible that I had not been expressing appreciation to you all and to the department heads along the way for all the things that work and all the things that are going right. So many things, so many things. So that was really meaningful. All right, so I would like us to go back before we go forward. I would like us to go back to that Mentimeter survey thing that we did. So pull out, I think it's, I forgot what tab it's under, the list of agreements. Tab 6. The list of agreements that you made last year. And I would like to know where would you all like to focus? Which of these feels like, okay, if we did this one really well as a group, I know you chose individual ones, but if we as a group could nail this one so that we're absolutely green at this next year, which ones would you say are the most important for that reason?
I'll start with number 8, operate with integrity.
Okay. So if everybody signed on to that and it was super green, that would make a big difference.
I just think it would make all of the other ones also fall into place.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, Antoinette. What else?
I would say number 4, use a pro and con list as a tool to make logical policy decisions.
Okay. So really digging into that pros and cons list you're getting
Exactly.
from staff to
Yes.
say, oh, these are the things that are impacting that.
These are the, yes, and then we can sort of see where council fits in there, and we sort of bring it all together. And I think we get a better vision of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, you all can add the political and the
Exactly.
community piece
Exactly,
and the strategic piece to
for
that
sure.
list.
Yes.
Nice.
That was your share last year as well.
It's a good one.
I would say 13, avoid surprises. Doesn't mean you don't say it in public, but to give staff or your fellow council members an idea that you're gonna get quoted in the paper or talk at the dais about something.
Yeah, yeah, it's a nice courteous thing to do, to just say, I'm gonna express a different view than yours on this topic, and I'm gonna do it publicly. Nice.
I would ditto that, but also for the purpose of us being able to have a healthy conversation around what comes up. If it's a new thing we've never heard before, how can we make a wise decision concerning it, or give feedback, or even uplift what's being said? If it's our first time hearing it, after we've been having series of conversations, then how can we investigate that what you're saying is an alternative path or the right path?
Yeah, so you're saying, Shanika, that it's almost back to that express your view early, raise your question early, because if we're going down a path and then something gets raised late in the process and we haven't had a heads up that that's coming, we're not in a position to think through that for ourselves. Am I getting it right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody brings something up in a council meeting that they've not given anyone a heads up about, council almost cannot even begin to digest it. Like, I mean, it doesn't even, it's just the processing time isn't there. And I think that's pretty well known, so if somebody does that, it's just for the point of it. And then you just kind of feel like an idiot, because you just got used to make a point of it. So the whole experience is unsatisfying. And I would think it would be unsatisfying to spring it on people, because then it doesn't happen anyway.
Right. It's another thing I heard from staff is, I don't think it made the page, but one of the themes that came out that didn't make the minimum number, I guess, to make the page was, we don't need council to have one person come ask for something. We can't respond to one person. We can't do something for one person. It has to be a council directive through the city manager for us to respond to something. Kind of on that same line, but a surprise in the council meeting without anybody having heads up, and it's just one person, can't really get it done.
So I had 10 and 12 on my list, the no triangulation agreement and perspective seeking. And, one of the things that we've been struggling with as a council is how to digest materials ahead of our council meetings. We've been using this format of check-in meetings where we're meeting with one or two council members plus me and the staff all throughout a day, go over the agenda, go over some additional materials, every 2 weeks or week before every council meeting. And I'm just wondering if, and there's definitely some concern in the community around transparency and concern about that process, which is, I think an unforced error on the part of council, in the sense that there aren't decisions being made in those check-in meetings, but I can understand the perspective. So there's that kind of external perspective. But in terms of internal and the triangulation concept and the perspective seeking, I'm wondering if it's time for us to do something that we've been talking about for a while, which is to transition to these work session format instead, where the full council meets. It can be like the way the county commission does it, just as an example. There's lots of different ways to do it, but they meet for the 2 hours before every commission meeting. They review the agenda for the next commission meeting. They review any kind of last minute things for that evening's meeting. And then these other things that are more substantive and are kind of longer term that need some visit, maybe more than one time visiting the issue. And I wonder if that would help us in terms of tamping down the triangulation issue, because we're trying to through the check-ins carry on, well, this perspective was voiced, or I don't know if I captured that right. And hearing everyone's perspective on things, because the staff also needs to know, is the council beginning to pivot on something? We have a long-term, we just went through this with Memorial Stadium project, is there a rotation happening here, and they need to understand which direction we're going in? I think if we're all together, it'll be easier to gauge that. I'm just floating that out there as a way to address this, because I do think we have some challenges in our working dynamic as a council. I don't know. Gwen's like, oh, really? So I don't have the magic answer, but I'm just making a suggestion that I think might help us a little bit better with our working relationship and information sharing and gathering.
I'll add some concern that when we do the check-in process, now we're spending upwards of 6 to 8 hours every other week of staff time while we do have limited resources. We don't have minutes. We always have a quorum of a subcommittee of council. So I wonder if we were to switch to a process like the county does, if we could maybe address some of the issues that staff has already brought up around what support looks like. Being able to have consistent, clear communication might add to where people feel undermined.
Other thoughts? Would the work sessions be a place too, Mayor, for if staff needed to provide you a report about updates that are coming or something like that? Would that also be a place for those to fall?
Do we know about staff's concern around time put into check-ins as opposed to work sessions? Because I think we might be making assumptions, and I want to be clear, because I don't think the advantage in making a change to a work session actually advantages everybody. I want to know what staff concerns and management's concerns around changing to a different form of check-in.
That's a great point.
And for me, check-ins allow me to, a lot of times it's the first time I've heard about a particular issue. And although I'm an extrovert and I do tend to process fairly quickly, I want to be able to ask questions to make the right decision, and feel like staff can be as honest and coherent, et cetera, with me as I'm processing through that decision. And I believe that that's why I got elected, is because people trust my judgment, but they don't want to sleep with me and hear my every waking thought. Because a lot of times when I ask a question, frankly, it probably isn't, the first question isn't probably as well thought through. It's not maybe politically, I probably wouldn't want to see it on the front page of the paper. So to me, it gives me that way of getting that information before I'm asked to vote on it or not, et cetera. And I feel like if we did everything in a work session format, it's actually going to create more time for staff, because I'm not going to go into a work session without having that information first. And so that's why I've been supportive of these check-ins, just because it's, I feel like my constituents want me to be as open and honest about questions that I have all the time. And I don't necessarily think a work session format's going to allow me to make the best decisions.
So to her point on just being raw, because you started off by saying that moving to a work session might help with staff feeling undermined. I feel like in the council check-ins, I feel like we can be a little raw and more candid. and we can kind of show like we don't know a lot about an issue, but when we're in public lights, camera, action, sometimes you want to appear refined and knowledgeable, and that holds people back from asking questions. So the check-in process and even hearing information and taking time to gather information so that you can have follow-up questions is sacred to a lot of us who don't have time and a lot of us who have been heavily criticized. So I think we need to really do some investigation about who is it advantaging? And if it's disadvantaging the community as it pertains to transparency, then how can we tighten it up? Because I'm tantruming over it because I don't have a lot of time away from my children to do these long work sessions where everybody's normally pretty guarded for whatever reason. Staff is guarded and we're guarded because we're under the public eye. So the check-ins in some regard allows us all to have a certain level of vulnerability. So how do we withhold the vulnerability so that we continue to build this core within, but have it tight enough where the public can be ensured that this is what is discussed. Maybe we do take minutes, yeah, how do we restructure it so that we keep the sacred moment, given, the value of time? Also, that we don't have staff. We don't have an office. This is our office time. It's personal to us. So I'm not giving it up without consensus from not only council, but also staff. And I'm not giving it up if the public is going to continue to make it a topic of criticism. So how do we restructure it in a way that is sacred for us? We can all be vulnerable, get our questions answered, but also have the public's agreement, so to speak.
I like that you are saying to the public, this is the value of it. This is why you want us doing this, is because we get to ask the basic question.
You can say raw.
Raw question. I was going to say dumb question, because that's when I'm first learning about something, I don't want to ask all my silly questions necessarily. I'd like to get some of that done out of the way and then be able to have meaningful dialogue about it. So it's, their values both ways. And I think you have to think about, what do we need to be able to do the best job for our constituents? And if that's these check-ins, if that's what it takes for you to be able to feel like you get everything you need to then make good decisions, then I think you all should talk about it before you give it up, for sure. Sounds like something you need further discussion about.
Oh, no, I've had a little discussion. I gave some processing lead time on this. I'm not wedded to one format or another. I personally feel fairly comfortable in either format, but I respect that that's not everyone's favorite venue. I do, if we don't transition to a purely a work session format, and we do work sessions from time to time. We do budget work sessions, we do topical work sessions for sure. But, I think Shanika's right. We got to think about how do we, explain what a check-in is to folks, because there's stuff on social media about a secret vote and things like that, which is not true and not how that works at all. It really is an opportunity. We just heard from 17 department heads. When you're elected to city council, you do not know what 17 departments do. You don't know and you want to be able to say, explain to me this water system, what do you mean about how this and that works? And it's a separate fund, is it, whatever, all the technical details about these things. So your constituents think you know everything about every single thing about the city, and of course you don't. So, it is an opportunity to learn in a supported environment. I think the check-ins have become, they're a little challenging on a dynamics level. And I think, I worry about because they are raw, as you say. And I think staff's gotten a little bit to where they're kind of bracing themselves for these check-in meetings, because, if we've got a tough topic, it can get pretty tough. So I think we need to get ourselves kind of in check around that. The job of a city council is different to everybody. Sandra talked about it being like a company, like you're literally at a job, you're at a company. And I think about it like, we talked about ownership, like it's my company. I have a lot of pride in it and ownership in it. When it slips, I feel like I'm slipping. I want it to do its best all the time. But I don't know that everybody thinks about it like that, and I don't know that everyone has to think about it like that. But I think that our staff come to it like it is a job they want to do well at, and I think they're expecting that it will be a certain kind of work environment, and that we can't just kind of run all over them, because that's not what's supposed to happen in a work environment. So I want us to continue to work better together and get all the information we need and work with staff in a way that reinforces our value in what they bring to the table. Does that make sense?
And it goes back to what they said in their feedback, that they want to be treated as trusted experts, and have an air of respect and mutuality between you and them. They want, you to be able to trust them.
Would this, going toward the work session process that you speak of, would this more or less give us more contact and insight to the other departments working with us? Would that make the process work better?
I think it can be what we want it to be. I think what happens that's more is that we're all together during a work session. So we're kind of hearing each other's questions and we're understanding more.
No, I'm talking about with staff.
Well,
How do they play into the work session?
Well, they would support the work session. So if it's, if we're covering topics that go through, concern their department, they're participating.
So they'll be participating and also hearing our questions, so they could actually respond to concerns, as opposed to when we're a check-in, we only have a limited amount of information.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question for you, Deborah, in terms of if we were to do that, and we don't necessarily have to figure this all out now, but we don't always have departments in our check-ins. So a lot of times questions come up and the area expert's not in the room.
Exactly.
So we don't know.
Yeah.
I would hope that since a check-in is not all day long and it is a couple hours, that maybe we would be able to be supported by
The work session.
yeah.
Well, that's what I was trying
Or
to.
in a work session, yeah.
Okay.
Another thing that just came to my mind, any given check-in, one person might have a list of demands. And they, those demands and those questions and back and forth may very well take up the entire time, and we're just on one topic. Just imagine all 7 of us loading questions on. That is an all-night thing. So I'm really not sure time-wise if we can fit everybody's questions, concerns, and the feedback into a work session.
And I think the goal here, and that's what we gotta keep in mind. Why do we have check-ins? Why do we have work sessions? This is all about a communication. How do we best, from a staff perspective, communicate with our board on key issues, concerns, and then how does our board communicate with staff about their key issues and concerns? And so if we have the guardrails and the goal of how do we best communicate also to the community about the collective issues between staff and elected officials, and what is that forum? What's the best forum? And it may not be one forum. We can have works, which we do. We have work sessions, we have check-ins, and I think staff would like kind of the flexibility to do it all. I mean, to do check-ins sometimes and not to do check-ins sometimes, depending upon the magnitude of the issue. There is never a time in our check-ins where there is this secret kind of dialogue that we're having, but sometimes those conversations can get heated and uncomfortable space, and as the vice mayor said, and pretty raw. We either got to get comfortable doing that in a public setting. If we go totally to the work session format. But I think this is really about how do we best communicate with one another and with the community.
And whichever way you all decide, whether you decide to stick with the current approach or to go work sessions or a combination of the two, I think one of the key elements is to not play gotcha. Not play gotcha with each other, not play gotcha with staff, not to make a thing out of the fact that either of you as council or the staff, it needs to say, I don't know. Let's research that and figure it out. And so I think that is part of your challenge that I really can't completely relate to is, except I'm on a public board, and so that's the most public thing I do. But I think you all have a very different set of challenges related to how do we keep transparency and keep a safe space to ask every question.
Well, the thing is I noticed that we talked about triangulation, and that's a subject that we should discuss here. The work session will provide us an opportunity to actually alleviate a lot of the triangulation that happens here. And like you said, of course, we're not used to that format, but once it's in place, you may find, like I said, we won't be getting all the pushback from the public as far as, being, not transparent and hiding things, because as long as that narrative has been played and we don't do anything to change it, it will continue, which makes us less effective. So I actually think the work session, because it has been successful with Buncombe County, may be something we need to actually consider, because like I said, the triangulation thing would not be affected, because whatever we say as a group, everyone has a chance to respond accordingly, and no one's saying anything behind anyone's back.
Well, I think, some of these rules of engagement, or engagement probably sounds a little militaristic, sorry about that. Rules of meeting, I think we have to give ourselves and the staff permission to kind of call each other out in those check-ins. I know sometimes I allow myself to get pretty heated and take over, and I guess right here, I would give any of you permission to say, okay, Gwen, ratchet it down, and everybody that way, which I think would help me relative to, when I'm in a particular work session, and make it more trusting. But again, I guess for me, a work session format on everything, I feel like what would happen, at least for me and how I process, either before or after the meeting, I'm gonna have to have a separate sit down with Deborah and say, well, okay, I think I really have a dumb question here. So, and I'm not gonna sit at a dais and say it, but I gotta know it before I make a decision. And so, from the standpoint of staff time being more effective, et cetera, I feel like I need a space to be vulnerable, but I also feel like we need to be vulnerable with each other and give each other permission to say, hey, you know what, you're getting too personal, or, can you take a couple deep breaths, et cetera. I think some of us have those kind of personal relationships with each other where we can kind of say, Esther and I have that relationship. She tells me to shut up. I tell her, no, I never do. But, I mean, I think if even, and staff too should have that ability to say, you know what you just said, or that tone you're taking with me feels disrespectful, making me feel bad, I want to shut down, might help if we kind of had those agreements with each other.
I'd like to ask what could be a stupid question, but I'm looking at the list of the 10 things, the words from the department heads and the 10 things that they shared, and don't overweight a small minority of constituents' views when making decisions. Can someone tell me how large of a concern in the community is this? Or is this a small concern? Is this a small concern or a large concern in the community?
About a few people making
About
the
this-
decisions?
The check-in process in general, is this a large concern in the community?
Oh, you're talking about the check-in?
Sorry.
Oh,
So you're saying,
Okay.
is this an example of when
Right.
a small group of people in the community are concerned about an issue?
Yeah.
Yes.
I ask
And are
because
we
I'm not
overweighting
getting.
it? Okay,
yeah,
no,
I'm
valid
not-
question.
Good question.
I'm just asking because I'm not getting a lot of, I get a lot of emails in general. I'm not getting a lot of emails about this. I'm not hearing it from the people I am speaking with, but that doesn't mean that you all might not be. So I'm just asking, this is probably a check-in question I would have asked and not at the dais, but hey, is this a really big deal? And I'm not
Well,
seeing it.
The only thing is, it's not that that particular question is a big deal. It's just that the narrative that they're feeding in the community of our not being transparent. And then if you find a way to say, look at what they're doing, then that itself sort of spills over in the community, that we cannot be trusted. We're doing things behind closed doors.
And
Does
that makes me jump to one of the other statements, which is they want us to be more brave in the community. If this isn't a problem, then let's speak to it not being I mean, do we change everything because a few people are upset about it is what I'm getting at, or is it a lot of people? I'm just putting it out there, I'm really not
I
clear.
think there's a lot of people that are concerned about our transparency, because if you look at what's going on, even the media and people talking, they all saying they're not transparent. They're not being honest with, you haven't heard a lot of that?
Do you all have that same experience? I hear a couple voices and a couple
Yeah,
names in the paper talking about it.
Right, I
I
see
get
the
a lot of
same names
emails.
in the paper
Yeah.
that the press is
I hear-
reaching out to.
Well, I hear it a lot.
We're also, Gwen and I, for what
look
it's
at
worth,
this.
are the only two not running
Yeah.
right now, so you
Yeah.
may be getting different input.
No, but you know what? And that is, Sage, you know what? Sage is absolutely right, because that's what I'm hearing on the campaign trail. That's what they're using to actually put us down and to put a lot of stuff down. Yeah, that is the hot
But are they
topic.
talking about transparency in general, or they're talking
Well-
about this particular process?
well, no,
Because I don't think a
no.
lot of people even know
What's-
that we do check-ins. The few people who know, I think they scrutinize it because there is some distrust. But I don't think a lot of people even know that we have this process, even for us to weigh this under what you suggested earlier.
Right, and in my more professional conversations around this, I get things like, well, how could you do it without that? And of course, we need team meetings and, background information to do our jobs better. And that speaks to are we cohesive in our voice? Are we setting clear and concise goals? I kind of agree with Gwen, and I empathize with those of you on the campaign trail right now that are hearing more of this, and that's
Yeah,
why I brought it up.
That's all they're saying.
And I'll pay more attention to that. I just wanted to put it out there because I'm just not sure
Yeah.
that the 90,000 people or 93,850 that don't email us are upset about this.
Well, the thing is this, like I said, it's not that, it's a transparency. It's not that, it's just a transparency. And it doesn't really matter what issue it is. Every issue that comes up, pretty much, whether it be Charlotte Street, Merriman Avenue, the bike club, whatever it is, they still come back and find some kind of way. They're not telling us everything. The city is running everything. These few people, I'm just saying, that is what's going on. And and that's what's causing a lot of the conflict. So if you say to them, okay, yes, we're not gonna hide anything, let's just put it out there, then they won't be able to use it. I'm just saying that's what they've been using, and they will continue to use.
Okay, and I can appreciate that perspective. And for me, then, I'd want to hear from the management team about what that looks like to them and if that's something they would recommend that we could trust them to do. Because it does, to Councilwoman Smith's point, seem like it could create more work for them, so.
Can I ask a question? I think, Mayor, you said the work session would be about not the meeting immediately following it, but the next meeting.
Yeah, that's the format used by the county, and the county also has a thing they don't call check-ins, but they call 3x3s, which are check-ins. So they still, because there's just some,
I mean, every single elected body of local government has some process where people are sitting down at a table and getting information so they can make a decision about something, whatever they call it, check-ins, 3x3s, whatever, it happens.
So could you do?
We could do a, I mean, I think to Shanika's point, I mean, time is limited and staff time is limited, and this is supposed to be a part-time job, so we have other jobs. We have other really, like, you know, I mean, for me, I mean, I work full-time in addition to this, so, so I mean, if we had all the time in the world, sure, we could do check-ins and blended, we could do work site, we could do it all, but, I don't really know what format gets us to a place that's sort of the most effective with the least amount of time, so time's not wasted, in other words. You know, I do see a lot of public bodies that do, like school boards and county commissions and city councils that do a public agenda review a couple weeks ahead of, or the week ahead or whatever, before they, or actually, doesn't the school board do like their agenda for that night, like they do, they just do it twice.
Yeah, they do it
They do it twice.
2 hours before.
Right. I'm not suggesting we do it that way, but I'm not, you know, I'm throwing it out there, and I'm not convinced that it's an election issue necessarily, like someone's gonna run and win or run and lose on this issue so much, and that's not entirely my motivation anyway. I am thinking a little bit more about, you know, just from a process standpoint, might there be an advantage to a check-in, to a work sessions format, in terms of our dynamic and our ability to communicate with one another and sort of see where we are as a body on different issues. But I'm not dying on this hill. I mean, this is, you know, whatever the will of the group is. And of course, what staff can manage. I mean, you know, that's.
So, I think we need to process this to assess literally how much time would be saved. You know, if you look at number 5, it says, request to Deborah and staff, provide a briefing on certain issues to council to help share more information in advance of a conversation or decision. That's what our check-ins are.
And I'd also point your attention to number 4, use pros and cons as a list tool to make a logical policy decision. So I'd be interested in the pros and cons before we make this decision.
Changing the format.
The decision about the decision. Good point. So if you think about it, so I hear, let's process it. Let's look at the pros and cons. Let's find out. Let's think on it a minute and see where we are, and what would be the best way forward, which I think is a great way to go. Just think about it. So, okay, good deal. All right, so it is now my pleasure to turn things over to Deborah for a staff update. Oh.
Are we to the part that's, is that where we are? Yes, okay.
Am I forgetting something? Council priorities. Everybody get my little staff joke? Okay, not so much with the jokes. All right.
not have the.
All right, you guys, let's take 10 minutes, and we'll get our stuff set up, and then we'll be back.
Want to vote on it?
I just saw it, yeah. I'm gonna pass it on. It's outside of my expertise to say what would be. I'm always happy to share. Well, I'll pass it on if they have more information.
That doesn't matter. This retreat is about getting to know each other. Why didn't you make this the one thing we didn't know about you? We want ages, name.
Gotta wait for the attorney. Oh, I didn't notice. All right, so the baton has been handed over to staff. This will unfortunately be us talking to you, not at you. But we will have opportunities for you to ask us questions or have your reflections. And essentially what we want to do is start out with, obviously, beginning with the end in mind in terms of the information that we want to share with you. And this is kind of a preview, a precursor that we do at every one of the retreats because we are so engaged sometimes in the here and now in terms of this emergency or that emergency that we really don't take time to think about what we have done, you know, because we're so used to, let's move on to the next, let's do this, let's do that. And this is just a reflection. And I hope that it provides you all with, quite frankly, the pat on the back that you deserve in terms of the work, the effort. A lot of the things that staff has done has been based upon decisions that you all made, whether it is a budget, whether it is resources, and whether it is, quite frankly, a level of trust that you provide to us to do our jobs. So in terms of kind of the key takeaways is You know, you all have developed these formal, kind of official priorities, the things that you feel from either a long-term or short-term vision, and I'll get to that vision statement shortly, that you all want to accomplish for the community. And all of this is about how do we impact and positively enhance the lives of the people who live, work, and do business in our community. The priorities are closely aligned with each other. Luckily, there's alignment with your priorities, with the Living Asheville plan, which is kind of the community's vision, and you link your visions and priorities to that document and to those initiatives. And despite some of the staffing challenges and some of the things that you heard in terms of directors' responses, we're making progress in terms of implementing a lot of the strategies and priorities that you all have adopted over a number of years. And we just want to acknowledge those and provide kind of some updates since last year. Staff is using what you all give us in terms of priorities. You said, we want to work on these following things. Well, we tell our department heads, now you develop a work program, a work plan that demonstrates how you are aligning what you do with these priorities. And we'll be doing that. We have done it. We didn't do it last year. We did it in 20, and talking calendar year, and then we'll do it in the upcoming fiscal year. So this is going to be a tri-party presentation. So I'm going to speak a little bit, then Peggy's going to come up, and then Rachel is going to close us out. It just wants to move, but it will not. And so cities don't happenstance. That is, most of the time, good work is done by having kind of a North Star. This is who we want to be. This is where we want to go in terms of a community. And so you all in 2016, before a lot of us actually were here, developed a vision statement. And I'm not going to read every word, but I would suggest to you all that you go back and revisit this vision statement occasionally, such that you can determine if we are being true to this vision. This is for 2036 that we want to achieve. Are we making progress on things that will help us achieve this vision? But more importantly, is this the right one still? You know, has things changed so much since 2016 that maybe in the next council retreat, we may be thinking about, let's either touch up this vision statement or let's just create a whole different one. I don't necessarily like throwing away vision statements, but definitely maybe it's time for us to kind of tweak and maybe rethink if we're focusing in on, through our statement and our vision for the community, the right things. So I'll just do just a couple of the things. We care about people. We invest in our city. And I'm so pleased, again, I wasn't here in 2016, that your first statement was about people and an expression of how you feel. We care about people. And that's really, really important for local government to start a vision out that way. And you didn't start it out with physical stuff. You said it's a great place, but live because we care about people. We invest in our city, our urban environment and locally based economy, support workers, entrepreneurs, business owners, families, and tourists. You have the word equity in there, you have the word participation, and you have the word partnerships. And so what we did kind of with that vision statement is say, okay, if we thought about that vision statement and then put it into digestible kind of key focus areas, what would they be? And so your 8 is equitable and diverse community, transportation and accessibility, thriving local economy, connected and engaged community, well-planned and livable community, clean and healthy environment, quality affordable housing, financially resilient city. What we're going to do is going to provide you with kind of an update of all of your priorities linked to these focus areas. And so you all, when I first came here, we were dealing with, and we still are, like 31 or 2 priorities. And I think you heard from Rebecca, that's a lot. So we started out with 30-something. We kind of went down to, let's just maybe focus on what we think are short and medium. And at a retreat, you all went through that exercise, and we kind of ended up with these 13 strategies. And again, you're going to hear a lot about those and progress that has been made related to those. And I think Rachel is going to do that one, that portion of the presentation. Last year, you came up with some priorities: reparations, employee compensation study, reimagining public safety, utilization of ARPA funding. And I think Peggy is going to do that portion of the presentation. And if you do not feel that we have focused on these priorities, I don't know where you've been, because the commission has been established. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we have been able to accomplish with you. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Peggy, and she's going to work backwards. We're going to start with your 4, and then we're going to go to the other 13. Thanks. It's slow.
Thank you, Deborah. And to start off with, one of your priorities last year for this year was reparations for Black Asheville. We want to just give you a quick update on and remind you all of the accomplishments that you've made in that area. Set aside $2.1 million to be used to fund reparations. The staffing of the Office of Equity and Inclusion is fully staffed now. In progress, as you know, is the formation of the 25-member commission. And then you have defined the commission focus areas: housing, economic development, public education, public health, education, and public safety and justice. Phase 1 was completed with the information sharing and truth-telling. We are underway on the formation of the commission. I should say you're underway. And then phase 3 will be to finalize and present the report. Employee compensation, one of your other focus areas for this year. You funded $7.9 million to implement the compensation study. It was just unprecedented and much appreciated. That allowed us to implement the plan. It also provided some significant increases for our public safety employees and a 2.5% increase for all other employees in the city. Ongoing are continued reviews of the compensation and the compression issues that we're addressing as we move forward. You approved 8 weeks of paid parental leave and 6 weeks to care for qualified family members with a serious health condition. And then we're hiring key vacancies across the organization as a top priority. So again, a lot of support from you all and a lot of headway made as it relates to compensation. Reimagining public safety, what has been done in that area. Reallocated funding that allowed for positions to be moved from APD to DSD, which includes animal services and some noise ordinance enforcement. The park warden positions from APD to the Parks and Recreation Department. You funded staffing for ITS Department's Office of Data and Performance. You funded Kate position, Neighborhood Services Specialist. Funded Homeward Bound homeless outreach position to work in downtown and other areas. More under reimagining public safety is the 911 consolidation was complete. The Lights On initiative, the police recruiting efforts, the homeless action plan, and again, the homeless action plan in partnership with Buncombe County
will hire a consultant to develop an actionable plan to address unsheltered homelessness in Asheville and Buncombe County. And then American Rescue Plan Action Funding. Defines the allowable uses there on the left-hand side, recommended categories of affordable housing, homelessness services, small business recovery, workforce development, food systems, city infrastructure, domestic violence prevention and assistance, and community communication. Progress to date, RFP for funding advertised, initial staff scoring completed, and council work sessions to hear from applicants. The next steps will be to award the initial funding. And then finally, areas where there has been funding provided, listed there to the tune of $8.3 million, and another 17.9 to be awarded. So as you can see, you guys have kept us busy, and a lot of your priorities are well underway, and we appreciate your time. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel to talk about the focus areas and the 13 strategies.
And while Rachel is coming up, just point of reference, this presentation is behind tab 8.
I wanted to add too, one thing I didn't see under the reimagining that I think is one of the great things we've done is the community paramedic.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Well, and technically the it's the
It's
counties.
Well, we
but-
participated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, no.
I thought we were
We
part
have
of the
not
funding. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that we split the funding with them. I take it back.
The ask is out there, but we haven't done it yet.
Work in progress.
Well, thank you. So I'm in the unenviable position of being the last person to present before we adjourn. So I promise to make this go as quickly as possible. What I'm going to go through is really a sampling. So you're not going to see everything that we're doing hitting on the 8 focus areas. You're not going to see all of the work that staff is doing to hit on those top 13 strategies. It's just going to be a high-level overview. In concert with that effort, one of the things that Deborah's had me working with the department directors on is really how do we focus on making progress and celebrating the victories we have along the way, trying to get at, it is overwhelming, the number of different initiatives we have going on across the city. So we've worked with the department directors to establish a list, and this is a big list too, of what are our top priorities, just of things we're trying internally to accomplish by the end of this fiscal year. And it's 29, and it's been an act of Congress, honestly, to get the directors to narrow it down to 29. So that's just kind of a testament to the fact that it is really hard to prioritize your priorities, given how much we have going on across the city. But a lot of what I'm going to be hitting on here, there are parallel departmental priorities where we're working on those things. So first of the 8 focus areas is transportation and accessibility. And one of your top 13 strategies was to implement phase 1 recommendations of the Transit Master Plan. And there have been some successes in this area, but really the biggest holdup that I'm hearing from transportation on this specific strategy and making headway is that we need to have additional staffing through the ART contract. And so we did fund some additional improvements in the last fiscal year, but the ART staffing shortages are not even, we're not able to provide the service at a minimal level that we want to provide now, much less expand routes, which my understanding is that's the primary focus of the Transit Master Plan. So that's something that transportation is working on. I know there are some discussions taking place as a part of the budget process. But definitely an area where we need to really figure out how do we help ART meet its staffing needs so that ultimately we can achieve the goals of the Transit Master Plan.
And you mean specifically the contractors?
The contracts, yes.
Employees' capacity?
Indeed, yeah.
But what about within our department? We seem pretty thinly staffed within our department.
Absolutely, and so that is another focus, is making sure that we can staff up the departments to then provide the support ultimately needed to lift up these contracted services that we have. So that's something that we are acutely aware of, particularly in transportation and parking, transit, and something I know that not only the department, but Human Resources is helping us focus on.
And Rachel, before we move on, I just wanted to add into this conversation, it's not just the South Asheville routes to S3 and S6 that we haven't implemented yet, but also the evening service hours.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, and
That's
that
right.
really is needing additional drivers. I've been in contact with Jessica on that, and my understanding is, right now, they need just 75 drivers to be able to implement, and we're hovering around 54 to 56 drivers under the contract. So looking at strategies so that we can,
The CDO.
yeah,
Mhm.
so that we can improve the attractiveness of that position, those positions right now. So moving on to quality affordable housing, you hear about this a lot, particularly in recent city council agenda items that have gone through. So I'm not gonna hit on any of these in any great detail. So just noting a couple, obviously in February, you all approved the $2.5 million in funding for the Haywood Street Community Development, which added 45 units. And then really great news that I learned earlier this week from Nikki is with regard to Ramada, we're looking at having the closing date by the end of this month. So that's a huge step forward, and just wanted to note on those two things. Of course, there's a lot happening in the space of affordable housing, but this is just a sampling. An equitable and diverse community. So Peggy's already hit on some of the great work that's happening with our Office of Equity and Inclusion. Just to hit on a couple of other things. The HCD committee, I know recently heard about some restructuring to what we call our SPF, Strategic Partnership Fund grant, or excuse me, Strategic Partnership Fund grants, and there really is going to be a focus on how do we foster economic mobility, particularly with the schools. So the team is really looking at how do we restructure that program to make sure that we are providing grants to existing programming across the community that can help students bridge that opportunity gap that we're all aware of. A well-planned and livable community. So these strategies, some of them are pretty specific, develop specific implementation plan and schedule to amend the UDO. The other strategy is complete corridor studies and other plans identified for transit corridors to encourage supportive development that will be sensitive and complement adjacent neighborhoods. So we've done a lot of work. There's still a lot of work left to do. I'll just mention you had the work session recently on the open space plan, and we've got the open space task force that completed their proposed changes to the city's open space zoning regulations to refine amendments in the UDO. A thriving local economy. So the strategy there that was established in 2020 is to develop a business inclusion program to increase minority contractor participation. And that office has been established. The policy associated with the business inclusion program was adopted in October of 2020. And then I believe in February, Angelica Driver was named our newest business inclusion manager. So just some updates on that. A clean and healthy environment. So this one has a very specific target established with it, and that is reducing the municipal carbon footprint 4% per year with an 80% total reduction by 2050. So I know in January you all heard from Amber and our consultant on the climate justice plan, and Amber's team is working very hard right now, and one of those sister priorities that I mentioned earlier is her team has got a really specific work plan established in terms of how do we get our municipal climate action plan finalized and brought forward to the city council by the end of this fiscal year. So the goal is to have the plan finalized by the end of June 2022. A financially resilient city. There are several strategies here. I'm not going to read through all of them. I'll just hit on one. Participate in the TDA's Management and Planning Initiative to develop a capital investment plan for high priority projects. Of course, on February 22nd, you all had your capital first workshop that focused on capital. There have been several conversations with the TDA around how do we sync up our capital planning process with the TDA's funding cycle so that we can make sure, as we're looking holistically across the city at what are our capital needs, that we're looking at how do we then focus in on what are those projects that would most lend themselves to the requirements of TPDF funding, And I think we're getting to a place where we've got a much more structured process that we'll be able to bring back to you. Of course, having the legislation passed where there's additional funding available will certainly make that process much easier for us. A connected and engaged community. So this is the last focus area, and actually there were no top 13 strategies established specifically for this. Obviously, we want to be transparent, we want to communicate as we can with all of the initiatives we have going on across the city. But I'll just hit on one, the Asheville app. I know we've talked about that a little bit, even in some of the sidebar conversations that have happened today. It's a great resource. We love that the community is using it. And we know that we internally have some opportunities to improve consistency in how we use the app, not only in terms of how we respond to the requests that are received, but also the quality of the data and how we use that data to inform decision-making moving forward. That's something, as I've been looking into the cleanliness issue that I'm going to be presenting to you all on Tuesday, it's become apparent that there's some needs to enhance the integrity of that data just so it can be more useful as a tool as we're looking at how do we deploy resources and where do we focus in as we're targeting our energy to address community issues. So with that, I'll hit on some next steps, and Deborah already touched on some of this. So tomorrow, we're going to discuss best practices for review of strategic priorities, and that's something that Rebecca is going to be going through. And then the afternoon session is focused on establishing those strategic priorities for the upcoming fiscal year. And we're hopeful that those are going to be specific enough that we can respond to, but also give staff some latitude that we can actually operationalize those based on the known resources and the known needs that are existing in the community. Then between now and the end of the fiscal year, of course, the annual operating budget and CIP are going to be developed, and we plan to use the priorities that are established to be kind of those guardrails and governing practices around which the budget is developed. From there, Deborah mentioned departmental work plans. We're going to work really hard to have some structure around those work plans and make sure that those work plans have a direct tie to your city council priorities. Additionally, we've been working on the boards and commissions restructure, and we've been talking about council committees and how do we have them more closely aligned with city council's priorities. And so we're going to hopefully be able to use the city council priorities to inform setting, at least at a high level, what the agendas for the upcoming year are going to be for your council committees. So it'll not only inform how staff is doing their work, but also help inform the work of the city council committees as well. So that is all I have. Key takeaways again, we can go through them, but council's priorities have been developed over the past several years. As has been discussed throughout today's presentation, many of them are closely aligned with each other. And despite our staffing challenges, we are making progress in operationalizing your policy objectives. And we will be using and have used your priorities for budget development, as well as development of individual staff work plans and project work plans across the organization, and will continue doing so throughout the next fiscal year. That is all. I'll turn it back over to Rebecca.
Thank you. So, as we wrap up today, I thought we'd do a quick checkout. So I would like to hear from you, what is one new takeaway for you from this time together today? Anything at all, and whoever wants to start will go to the right.
That Sandra can go toe-to-toe with anybody.
Well, the one takeaway, whatever, I've really enjoyed this session, and I think what it's actually done is sort of brought us closer together by showing our likes and dislikes and being able to be open with people. And I really appreciate the way the whole session sort of panned out. It's almost like we have a certain calm or a certain respect for each other that we didn't have before. And I'm happy to see that. Thank you.
Excellent.
It's never too late to be who you've always been.
Kim?
I would just say that I appreciate that we have a lot of work to do and that I serve with smart, courageous women who are ready to do it.
And I'll kind of add on to what Sandra said. I think this is a little bit of a coming together and a trust exercise and a friendship exercise. And, you know, I will say, I think some of what we're experiencing, or perhaps what the community is experiencing, is purely because we've been virtual for so long. And having each other in the room together, I think, is gonna bring some of that back together smoother, quicker, hopefully. And lastly, I really want to say to Rachel, I don't know, you've been with us such a short time, but that was amazing. You have just, I mean, how long have you been? 7 weeks. 7 weeks. That was really well done, and I appreciate how you are approaching this new job. And clearly we have a staffing shortage, and I'm thankful that you have joined us, and just really good job today.
I just felt like I learned a lot from the staff input on that survey.
I had a couple of things, I guess they're more highlights than takeaways. I really, really loved finding out one thing I didn't know about everybody. That was fascinating for me. And also, I really liked seeing what we thought about, you know, is it the mentee? Yeah. I like seeing if what I was thinking kind of coincided with what, you know, colleagues were thinking. So thanks for that.
Well, I forgot to say thank you earlier, but the paid parental leave is coming in handy for me, especially since I'm not FMLA eligible. So I would not be in my role were it not for the paid parental leave. But really appreciate everyone's willingness to be candid and open today, especially coming new to the organization and not knowing the city council very well. It was really great today to get to know a little bit more about each of you personally and get to know your personalities better.
I'm going to echo what Gwen said and express my appreciation for the opportunity for you as councilwomen to hear what staff says and vice versa, because I really think that that communication, although there are these walls legally set up, that if we could find a conduit to allow that to happen more, I think the appreciation would be very strong both ways. So I really appreciate this opportunity to get to not just share that information, but see your reaction to it.
Mayor? I know, is there anything you want to do to wrap us up?
Oh, we're doing, okay. We're done already?
Yeah.
It's 2:15.
Do you mind if I have a chance?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So I wanted to just say how much I appreciate the staff who helped organize this day, because this just doesn't happen. It's a lot of work. And Jamie and Jenna, and I don't want to start naming, but this whole crew that seemingly is observing, they truly have been active participants in making this day successful. So can you all join me in a round of applause for and I'm done.
Okay, I want to thank, the vice mayor joined me in doing some planning with staff. We just gave our input and staff put it together, as Deborah said, so that's greatly appreciated. To the Civic Center staff who got us in the building today, that was very good of them to do that. And, you know, for our audience members, what's left of them, thank you. And I know we have some people watching us virtually. So, and it does take a lot of work, I know, to put this together. So thank you so much for working with our staff and the staff working with you and getting this ready for today. So maybe one day we'll retreat somewhere other than Harris Cherokee, but this has been I think one time we went to Montreat. No, we went to Warren Wilson. We went to Warren Wilson cafeteria. They make their own food. It's pretty good. But for now, this is a great location. So I share in the warmth and love and bonding that we just experienced today. I love that. I know I don't seem very touchy-feely, but I do enjoy it so much. Really in my heart, not a little bit more than you would imagine. But so I look forward to day 2 tomorrow. So
9 o'clock.
Yeah. So everyone.
You guys can leave everything on the table. The room will be locked up, so you don't have to carry things